Hey guys, it's Jen and Julian. You are listening to episode 24 of X Appeal. And I am having Braxton Hicks contractions. That is a fact.
Yeah, change of scenery today. We're at Jen's house.
Yeah. Yes. Well, as you can see, shit's not done yet. So I want to make that clear before anybody hops on the judge train.
They want to see that you have a chair.
Hops on the judgy train. So, okay, as you can see, I have Sophie's ramp to get up on the couch that doesn't exist. So thank you, shipping delays. Thank you, holidays, whatever this is. Thank you, Macy's. You guys suck. I'm sorry, but you do.
Yeah.
Like this couch, we literally ordered it in May. And they said, oh, yeah, okay, so this won't be here until August.
Mm-hmm.
August turned into October. And now October is turning into December. So we're not going to have a couch.
But you see, what I don't understand is like
December.
There's so many places we can buy a couch. And like if I had to wait 2 months for my couch, I would have canceled the order and just gone.
Well, I'm not doing this again.
Like there's so many.
If it's delayed one more time, I'm going to Restoration Hardware, or I'm going to some boutique where you probably have to pay out of your ass.
No, listen,
get a
not
couch
too far from here. You have a Restoration Hardware outlet, and you have amazing couches for like $2,000.
Is it gonna have the color that we want?
They have
problem, Julian.
30.
Look, we have an entire system back here, and we're looking for a dark blue couch. So anybody who's listening, if you have a dark blue couch that you want to get rid of that doesn't have any stains on it, help a sister out.
The same thing's actually happening to me too. I ordered an Iron Man helmet in January of 2021, and I still haven't received it.
Oh, I really feel your pain.
Yeah, so I really know what you're going through.
I'm really sad. I'm really sorry.
I miss Halloween. I couldn't have my Iron Man helmet. It's an Iron Man helmet that like opens up electrically and all that stuff.
How old are you?
I'm 32 and proud Iron Man fan.
What'd you do for Halloween then?
I worked most nights because I was working, and I was like work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We had like those big events like Marshmallow and all that stuff spinning. And I dressed up as trash.
I saw that.
Yeah.
You dressed up as your ex.
Yeah,
right?
So I had a trash bag on top of me, like on me. And then I had your ex written on it because your ex is trash.
I love that.
There you go. Yeah, I was surprised the amount of people who agreed with my costume.
Same girl.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, that is so my ex. Can I take a picture?
Yep. If you were single, that'd be a good way to pick up the ladies. That's all I'm saying.
You know what? Like, my dad always says, I know where you're trying to. We just didn't do the single stuff, but we'll get back to it.
Okay.
My dad always said, like, you should never talk shit about your ex.
No, I think it's a good idea to not talk shit about your ex, especially in front of a new person.
Yeah, but just generally speaking, because if you think about it, you dated them. So if you should talk about them, then
what does that say about you?
Yeah, what does that say about you? Have shit taste? There you go. So it says more about you. So never should talk about your ex.
That's exactly what it says. But also, you shouldn't talk shit about your ex in front of the new person, because we pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if you know this, but like, when I'm dating somebody, if it's somebody new, then if I hear them talking shit about their ex-girlfriend, I'm like, well, are you going to be saying these same things about me someday?
So you're already thinking of when you guys are going to be ex?
Yeah.
That's nice.
That's what I think about whenever I start to date somebody. I think about how it's going to end. That's a great attitude going in.
Do you care, by the way? Because I know in my relationship, I never ask about the ex. I could not care less. They're exes for a reason.
I'm so intrigued.
Really?
I've asked Jared 1,000 times about his dating history, and he won't give it up. Like he just, maybe it's because he knows better. I don't know, but he won't tell me those kinds of details.
Yeah,
and I want to know, like, I want to know everything. Like, I want to know, like, was the sex good? Like, what does she do for a living? Is she more successful than me? Is she smarter than me? Is she taller than me? Is she skinnier and prettier than me?
She's not. I
want to know. I want to know everything, all the dirty details. You don't want to know that stuff?
So it's funny because I have the exact same. Does he ask you? Does he ask you?
Well, I kind of willfully give it up, which is not a good idea.
So
I say too much.
My girl, she, like she's one day I think she said something. She's like, if we're ever in a room and there's a girl around us that you slept with, I want to know. And in my mind, I'm like, no, Like, what does it bring but no, she said she wants to know, so I will say it.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm just like, doesn't matter. Like, I'm with you. I don't care about this person. I'm not,
But is she asking from a place of like morbid curiosity, or is she asking because she just wants to know like who she is?
Probably. I mean, listen, I can understand how, like, let's say you're at a party and then you're chit-chatting with this one person and you guys really like each other, and then you find out that person, like, had sex with your current boyfriend and like they dated. I could see how I'd be like, I get that. But like, if we're in a random party and there's 50 people in it and there's one girl that I slept with and we're not even talking to her, to me, again, she wants to know, I will tell her. I'm an open book. But to me, it's like, It's just like, and me, I don't want to know. I don't care. It's like, whatever
so you
your
wouldn't
ex
want to know who she slept with in the room. You wouldn't be even a little curious.
No, unless it's really important. But to me, it's like, if there's something she wants to share about her ex, no problem. We can talk about it because I understand it's an ex and stuff. And if it's, especially if it has anything to do with how she handles our relationship, absolutely. But I'm generally not really curious about what you guys do. How was the sex? How does he look?
All of it.
Also, but I do know that one of her ex, I guess, is like some like douchebag, and that I guess when I guess I look better, so it's kind of like
okay, so
a nice
it's like it's
win in a sense
ego.
for me. Yeah,
it's like validation for you.
So this I don't mind.
Right. No, I mean, as long as it goes that way.
Yeah,
because the other way.
If her ex was Chris Hemsworth, I'd be like, Jesus Christ.
And he
Why
had
did
like
you leave this man?
A massive schlong, then maybe you wouldn't want to know that information, is all I'm saying.
A massive schlong? No, because if it's too big, it's not good.
Oh, God.
And I don't have a small schlong, so I'm good. So I'm no complaints. It's not massive, but it's good. I'm 6'2". It's proportionate.
So you're right. You're not a kickstand.
No, kickstand. I've never heard that before.
You've never heard that?
No.
Or a tripod?
A tripod, yeah. Third leg. Yeah. I heard baby's arm too.
Yes.
Baby's arm. I like baby's
kickstand.
Arm. It's really
Well, let's not talk about my baby. Okay? Let's not. But while you're asking, yes, he does have
a penis?
He is gifted, apparently.
You can't tell shit at that age.
That's what the ultrasound tech said. She was like, "Oh," and then she pointed it out and she said, "All right, okay."
Oh, so little.
She said it's not small, and I'm like, "Well, that's great."
He's hung. That's awesome.
It must be all the burritos that I've been feeding myself.
So basically, no, you're not talking about. You ask him about his ex. He doesn't really want to share much.
He doesn't say anything. He's like, I mean, he'll say like bits and pieces, but we don't talk about it.
He's like me. Do you get mad?
I get like weirdly, this is weird, okay? But I'm going to say it. I get like weirdly jealous / maybe a little turned on by it. Just because I'm like, ooh, there's competition. Yeah. He's dated some pretty girls before. And like, that makes him like, okay. Like now I have to maybe try a little harder. I kind of, it's a big competition thing. I can't explain where that comes from.
But you do realize that it's somewhat weird that like you ask a question to your man, he doesn't want to answer, you force him to answer, and then you get mad at the answer.
It's never mad. It's never mad. Okay. I never get mad. I always want to know.
Okay.
And I'm always prepared for the answer.
Okay.
Listen, I know he's dated girls who are like super successful. Like he's dated several like high-powered lawyers. Mm-hmm. He had a girlfriend who he lived with for 7 years.
Okay.
Who his mother still talks to.
Ooh.
And still has this but it's like a friendly relationship. It's almost like, if God forbid if Jared and I ever broke up, I can see her and I still talking. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, especially
she's just like a nice person.
Carry
like
his baby. So
yeah,
I hope you guys
that's true.
Talk.
Yeah, that's true. So it's not anything that makes me upset.
Yeah.
But sometimes he gets upset whenever I talk about my exes. And I think it's just like, I don't want to hear about it because I know that you guys have been intimate and like I don't want to imagine those details. So here's my question. Do guys get more jealous about the physicality of it all?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's the idea of like some other dude like effing your girl, you know?
Yeah, but everybody has a past.
No, I get it. But that's the one thing that like, we don't really care about like knowing about this. And then if we know, it's just going to be like, meh. Because we like knowing that this is ours, right? It's like, this is ours.
It's like an ownership thing.
Yeah, it's like, this is mine. You know?
I just want it noted that in the, how many minutes have we been talking right now? 18 minutes? It's gone from 36% to 22%.
Yeah, your laptop is trash.
It's spiraling. That's why I'm telling you. I'm telling you. When will you ever say, Jen, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, I get it. But like for those of you who listen, I had to drive here to set up her setup because as we all know, she's about to give birth. So we're going to start doing a few episodes remote. So Jen has a home setup.
Yeah. So I appreciate the sacrifice.
So no problem.
Driving to Playa Vista.
Hell yeah.
In the middle of a construction zone, which has been really quiet. Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah,
hopefully they won't start up again in the middle of us talking to Dr. Justin Garcia from the Kinsey Institute.
Who is coming? He's going to talk to us about what? Single studies?
So every year, the Kinsey Institute does this big Singles in America study. And before they, obviously last year we were like right in the height of the pandemic. So things were much different than they are now. So I'm curious what's changed and what's new, because he mentioned a couple of the trends and I'm like really interested in that.
Okay.
So let's
did you have any, talk to me about your dating? Oh, well, I guess you met Jared during the pandemic.
I met Jared during so we went on, I met Jared during the pandemic. We went on like 4 FaceTime dates before we actually met in person.
Yeah.
And
hey, regarding our last podcast, did you end up doing the coconut oil and?
Not the coconut oil, but things have gotten better. I got out of my head. Yeah.
Was that right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
God,
I got out of my head a little bit, and
they didn't make the whole relationship better.
I mean, it kind of like it just, I get it. I get where you were coming from and where he's coming from as far as like feeling attractive and desired and, and like sometimes, I might not feel sexy myself, but
you got to give it to
but he loves me and like he doesn't care what I look like,
which is amazing
because like the reason I look like this is because I'm carrying his child.
Yeah,
so it's a beautiful thing.
It's a nice release.
I just have to get there mentally, and to be honest, not too much longer of this.
That's it. And also, I told you it's going to be like 3
weeks away.
Quick little release.
That's fine.
It's quick.
It's fine.
When I used to watch like Sons of Anarchy, and I remember the woman, I think her name is Kate, the woman that plays his mom. Yes. What's her name? I forgot. Kate Siegel?
Kate Siegel.
She has a line at some point to a young girl that is joining the crew, right? Mm-hmm. And she's in love with this one biker in the crew. And she thought, as they leave, the guys leave, she tells to the mom, she says to the mom, she goes, "Oh, I hope he knows that I love him." And she looks at him, she's like the old, like, OG
she's like the old, no bullshit. Yeah.
And she goes like, "Oh, honey, men don't care about that." She goes, "Men just want to be wanted and women want to be loved." And I remember hearing this and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I was like, "Wait, hold on. Yes, that is so fucking true."
That's accurate.
I was like, wow, Sons of Anarchy pulling some deep stuff on me.
Some deep relationship wisdom.
So yeah, anyways, your dating during the pandemic was very different.
It was different.
4 FaceTime dates.
Yeah, we had 4 FaceTime dates. Then we went out for dinner in person.
Outside.
Yeah. Outside. At first I didn't believe that he was an ER doctor because I'm like, he's too cute. Like he's too cute. He's too funny. Can't have it all. Mm-hmm. God doesn't give people it all, So we went out, and we had like a great time. And we had our first kiss that night. And I remember exactly how it happened. He was showing me gory videos and pictures from his work. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God. I don't know. It just like made me like all like, oof, like super impressed that he can fix people.
Yeah.
And then we just like started making out after watching like an x-ray of somebody sticking something up their butt.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Where would you make out?
I actually forget where it was now.
Were you scared of COVID? When you're making out, when you're like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't.
I was a little afraid of that. But he's very careful. He never got it. He never got COVID. Awesome. knock on whatever this is.
Marble. Laminate. Marble.
So yeah, during the entire time.
That's so funny.
Fast forward to now, and it couldn't be better. Could not be better.
I remember having in the pandemic, like mid-pandemic. At some point, I went on a date with someone, and like our first date was at a park.
Yeah,
because everything was closed.
Yeah,
and you couldn't be indoors, so we're just sitting in a park with like
dorks, like a couple of dorks.
Just like, what the fuck is this?
This is what people do like 30 years into marriage.
Yeah,
like they go to a park and they sit and they feed birds.
But
you know what I mean?
But then we're like, it's kind of nice because at the end of the day, like you're not intoxicated. You're midday, so you get to see what the person really looks like. You don't have alcohol to make you a little bit looser, so you kind of get to see. Okay, are we at least comfortable enough?
Yeah, I think the pandemic really made people, aware of what their future with somebody might be like.
Yeah.
So let's bring in on Dr. Garcia to tell us where things are going.
Yeah.
Amongst all the singles.
Cool.
Justin Garcia is the executive director of the Kinsey Institute, which we are privileged enough to work with. And coincidentally, Dr. Garcia was actually our first guest ever.
Yes.
On Exappeal. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be back, and it's an honor. I get a double honor. I get to come and see you both again. And thanks. I love the messages and the conversations you're having with people about our relationships and how important they are, and complicated and satisfying and weird.
Yes,
and all of those things at once.
And you guys have the fun job of researching all of it. So tell me, you have the Singles in America study that you do every year. First of all, tell me what that is.
Sure. So most of the time my lab is here at the Kinsey Institute. I'm actually here right now, which is on the Indiana University campus. And for 75 years, the Institute has explored different aspects of people's romantic and sexual lives. And then one of the big projects that we do in my lab is called Singles in America. And for 11 years now, we've been working with Match.com on understanding the attitudes and behaviors of U.S. singles. So there's well over a third of the adult population, over 100 million adults that are single at any given time, people moving in and out of romantic and sexual relationships. Okay. For over a decade, we've really been trying to better understand who those singles are and their attitudes, their behaviors, what's changing and what's staying the same in courtship, dating, singlehood.
And is single means non-married or people that are in a 2-year relationship, they're considered they're not single?
That's a really important methodological point. So in our study, so what we do is we survey about 5,000 people. And they're not people who necessarily are on Match. So they're people, it's a national, what we call a demographically representative sample. So we use a third-party company. We define single as being unmarried, not engaged, not cohabiting with a romantic partner. So you could be casually dating one or more people, but you're not in a committed long-term relationship.
Okay.
But it's an important point because actually a lot of times when we look at government data, the census defines single as just being unmarried.
Right.
So it's so often people will get very different statistics and numbers depending on what population they're talking about.
Okay. So somebody who's been in a relationship for 2 years but don't necessarily live together, they're not considered single, according to you guys.
So if they're living together.
No, they're not. If they're not living together, but they're in a committed relationship for 2 years, for example.
Yeah, we would say that they're partnered, so that we wouldn't consider them single.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So these are people who are just casually dating.
Yeah.
Or fully single and aren't dating anybody. Exactly. All right. Well, that's very, very important to know. And I feel like, you can take the rules of dating or the laws of dating and just throw them out the window over the last 18 months because, things are so dramatically different. So from the last Singles in America study that you did to this one, what's the biggest change?
Oh, gosh. So so the last one we did right in the peak of the pandemic, and it was really interesting. The big story was, of course, at the time that people were having less sex. Really, the immediate impact of COVID was this decrease in sexual frequency, and we saw that in other studies at the Kinsey Institute. We saw it in our Singles in America data. Overall, these declines in sexual frequency, so people were having less sex. They were also reporting the quality of their sex life was lower overall. And I think what was happening, but what was interesting is that in some of our data, people were adding to their repertoires. So although they were having less sex, they were adding other new things. But when we looked carefully at what those were, a lot of them were, for the first time ever, talking to a partner about your sexual fantasies, using sex toys. Early on, sex toy sales actually were on the rise.
Wow.
So they weren't necessarily things that were really kind of wild in terms of adding to repertoires. A lot of it was, which I think is really interesting. So some couples or people who are even casually dating had never really turned to someone else and said, this is something I've always wanted to try. So that
because people were bored.
Well, exactly. It's funny you say that. Sometimes we'll interview couples, even when we do big data collections, single people and couples, to make sure we're asking the right questions and what other things we want to think about when we design a survey. And I talked to this one married woman who's in her early 30s. She has 2 kids. And she said, well, during COVID, my husband and I started having sex in the shower. And I thought that's an interesting, innovation. And is it because it was fun or it was thrilling? And she said, no, it's because the only time we had 4 minutes by ourselves was in the shower. That made me rethink some of the data in terms
By the way, sex in the shower is really not
dangerous.
What it's advertised in
it
movies.
It is not as sexy as people think.
Oh, it's so difficult.
It's difficult. I have fallen face first.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I'm like... Yeah, super scary. I know people with broken bones.
Yeah, I'm sure. You need a big shower with a seat
handles
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to have the good. I've tried laying down so that I could be laying and she could be on top of me, and I'm
laying
in water. No, in the shower, and I'm just getting chuck water. I'm way too long anyways.
And then it gets too hot, and you feel like you're gonna pass out, and it's just not. Yeah.
And also you women, you guys want boiling shower, and then us, we're just can we get it a little warmer? Less warm, anymore. Please, because it's burning right now.
Yeah. But we digress.
So water's not a great lubricant either.
It's not. So people were maybe doing a little more experimenting during COVID, but in a I guess the best way they could,
Yeah. I guess it's true because they had their kids 24/7. So it's true that you get no time.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And overall, these declines were happening, though, in terms of sexual behaviors and frequencies as the larger pattern. So that's what we saw early on. And one way we thought of that is that so many people, and I think when we talked last time, so many people were really freaked out about the environment around them. There's so many deaths. There was the economy. There was what was happening at work and school. That's not conducive to mating psychology, right? When a building's on fire, you don't stop for a conversation. It's not fear is not conducive for sociality, no less mating, or sex, or being intimate. So then for this next year, we said, okay, we've been in this thing a little bit longer, and what can we capture in the last few months with our new data collection that might have changed? And so to Jen's original question, what's changed? Something really interesting is emerging in this year's data, and that's that it's sort of this emotional leveling up that we're seeing among single Americans. I'm cautious about saying growing up because it is people of all age groups, but this emotional maturity that I think is really interesting. So, for instance, we ask people what you're looking for in a long-term partner, and we know attraction is always in there and humor is in there. But what's really boiled to the top this year is someone who I can trust and confide in. 84% of singles said that what they want most in a partner is someone they can trust and confide in.
Wow. As opposed to what they say last time.
What was higher last time was physically attracted. So in 2020, 90% in 2020 said physically attractive. This year, only 78% said physically attractive because people were just prioritizing. They could choose multiple options, but we're prioritizing more trust, communication, someone who can communicate their wants and needs, someone who's open-minded and accepting. So it's just what we're even looking for among samples of singles appears to be different.
I feel like a lot of that comes from trauma. Because if you've gone through a traumatic experience like a pandemic where it's isolating and you're unsure, you've lost your job, you've gone through this emotional roller coaster that comes with something that's so unprecedented, you're looking for somebody who you can share that experience with and trust that they're not going to bail on you or stay by your side. That's so interesting.
And also probably, your loneliness hits you.
Yeah.
Because now it's everything's closed. Bars are closed. Even when the pandemic was really when everybody was freaking out, we weren't even seeing our boys. I wasn't even seeing my guy friends. It's because we never know. It's too complicated. And if we do, it would be outside and stuff. So I could see how like it could make people realize that they want a partner.
Yeah.
What can you attribute to that?
Yeah, I think I think what you said is right. It's one of the things behavioral scientists will sometimes call post-traumatic growth. And sometimes a lot of us know about this. Sometimes things like cancer patients, after a really difficult time, they'll experience some emotional growth afterwards.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, this has changed my relationships or my life outlook in really positive ways. And I think it was this global trauma that we all experienced. Even if you personally didn't have death or you weren't sick, or just the world around us is shaken up. I think, Julian, like you said, I'm ready to get together with my buddies again, and to do some of that. Our lives have changed so much that now, for me, by training, I'm an evolutionary biologist, and one of the things I often think about is, why did relationships evolve in the first place? Why do we have these intense bonds? And in many ways, what we're seeing is the very reason that the sort of intense romantic relationships evolved in our ancestors over 4 million years ago.
Yeah.
And that was to weather uncertainty, to have close partners that we can handle predators, stress, different environments, different food availability, that we could kind of raise a family as a unit to get through the dangerous, complex world. Now, for the last few thousand years, the world's been more stable in many ways with industrialization and civilization. And we experienced this massive traumatic event. And what we're seeing is people leaning towards intimate relationships. If you're single, you sort of want them. If you're in relationships. Now, the story of married people was close to 80% of married people in other data have said that the relationships actually improved during this pandemic year.
Really? Because we always hear stories about how marriages have been falling apart. People get sick of each other.
People getting separated after 4 years just because like they can't take the partner. So I was literally about to ask. I'm like,
it's interesting.
And I think what we see is, so you see some cases like when you were talking to Dr. Zoe Peterson, these some cases of domestic violence or relationships that they really struggled during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Those issues got exacerbated. And some people who had problems, it was like light through the cracks, as my colleague Esther Perel says, right? That you really could start to see these problems. But for most people, we leaned on our partners, the very reason that we formed partnerships in the first place, that social support. And a lot of people had positive experiences in their relationships. And for singles, they started to value their close networks, their very close friends, maybe their closest colleagues, and then prioritizing, and I think that's what really we're seeing in the data, prioritizing forming close romantic partnerships to not have to go through this kind of stuff without that type of intimate support.
Yeah, it's like a tribal kind of, a very primitive attitude that we all have, where it's like we lean on each other.
Yeah, and it's funny how like not being able to see people face to face and then like be close to people actually makes you crave it more, and then it just reflects in your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because now that's what you want. You don't want the hot girl anymore. You want somebody who's like, oh, can I depend on them? Like, can I actually have a bond with them?
So it's in terms of what we're looking for whenever we go on these like first or second dates.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other thing that I've been having these conversations with my single girlfriends, and I'm like, especially this past summer, I thought it might be a tough time to find somebody who's willing to settle down, because we've just been through this like massive lockdown, prolonged lockdown, and who is going to want to, lock themselves down again in a long-term relationship.
Just want to have fun. And
so, like the term fuckboy came into, play a lot. This is going to be like the summer of fuckboys, like, people who don't know what they...
hot girl summer too?
Yeah, exactly. People who just don't take this dating game seriously, and they're just looking to have a good time and maybe not commit. But is that something that you saw as well, or you seem to be saying it's the opposite, where people are actually looking to find somebody who they can settle down with?
Yeah, and I love it, because I think in many ways that's what we predicted, right? It was going to be the hot vac summer and the slutty summer, and and I think there was a period at which we saw this sort of debauchery a little bit at the very start, because it was just like, oh, we can be out again, we can see our friends again, we can go to a bar again. But what we see in the data, at least in our data, and I think in some of the other data sets, is not really this. Early people were saying, is it going to be like after the the Spanish flu, and there's going to be the Roaring 20s, and
right,
yeah,
and we don't see that in the data. What we see is, so as one data point, for instance, that I really love is 62% of all singles of every demographic say they're more interested in finding a meaningful, committed relationship than in the past. And when we look at the age generations, right, this isn't something that a lot of people suspect. Oh, maybe that's older people because they've been at higher risk. Turns out 81% of Gen Z and 76% of millennials say that they do not want to remain single over the next year. So there really is only 11% of singles in our sample say they want to date casually. The rest want to find connection.
Gen Z is...
that's people who are younger than us.
So what year are they born?
It depends on how you characterize it, but Gen Z are generally people in their sort of 20s.
The TikTok generation.
So the one that get offended by everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Gen Z.
They want to be offended together. They want to be offended with somebody else. Yeah.
Cancel culture. Yeah.
I mean, I think we even see that with current college generations, which some people are calling, the Zoomers, as with people who are quite young now, and it's their desire for connection is a lot different. I think about my nieces who are, on a college campus, and the first year that they were in these dorms by themselves, they couldn't really go out, and they, we wore masks to stay safe, but also we're a social mammal, and not seeing people's facial expressions and when someone smiles, that brings us joy in return because that's part of the way we communicate.
Right.
And it's just been such an interesting time for us psychologically and behaviorally. A lot of people, the data really seems to support people leaning in towards close connection, close relationships, much more than casual sex or partying.
Yeah. When, about this, when this year, like in end of 2020, I got a virus from a mosquito. It's called chikungunya, also like similar to dengue. And then in October, or beginning of November, end of October is when I met the girl that I was with. And I started having post-infectious, really bad, like rheumatoid arthritis symptoms that I still have. Yeah. And it makes me think of what you said about the trauma, because the fact that I had someone throughout all of it that was just, understanding, helping out, and like just helping me, all that stuff, I think it made my relationship with her so much deeper.
Yeah.
And it made the whole thing so easy. Much easier than if I would have been single. Because
you think if you can weather this, you can weather anything.
And and you're just like, man, like this, you realize that it's really, really meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence really that like I am now pregnant and living with this guy who I met, last September. I just think that I was, in a place where like I was ready. We had all been through
already
so
a lot.
much. And then, you find somebody who you find is going to be supportive and will be there for you in like your worst moments, your most uncertain moments. And like, you see the value in that. And I don't think we saw the value in that until maybe this had happened. So that makes a lot of sense.
And I think that I love the stories you're both sharing, because it really is thinking about people who can be there, who can be supportive. I think Julian used help, the word someone who helped more than once is that's exactly what, I mean, how many of us 3 years ago were dating someone and made a joke of like, well, will they really be there if I need them? Well, we all needed someone this last year. It was the test. And I think that finding that person that will stay there, that is committed, that will support that. And the interesting thing in the behavioral science literature is that that's sexy, right? We don't often think of it.
Yes.
We often think of like, they're going to help, and that's, but I want someone who's going to get me excited and go dancing. But what really turns us on, what turns the human brain on, is that sense of commitment and trust and communication. That's sexy to us.
I have to say that is something. And Jared and I, my boyfriend, just had this conversation like a couple of days ago. I said, and he's been talking about, you're in the entertainment industry and like, you're around hot guys all the time. And I said, yeah, but what you have to understand is what I'm looking for, what I see value in now. And this has only changed really maybe over the last couple of years, is somebody who's responsible and loyal and dedicated and all those, things that make for a long-term partnership, trustworthy, someone who I can communicate with and not judgmental, compassionate, all those deeper things that maybe I hadn't seen. before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, I love it. And I think what's interesting is, Jen, what you're describing is what a lot of us have had in our own lives, but what we're really seeing in the data is this focus on getting to know partners, and getting to know that stuff, to learn that stuff from someone. So in our study this year, in the Singles in America study with Match from this year, only about 7 out of 10 people said that they wanted to have sex before the first date. So I'm sorry, only less than 7 out of 10 said they wanted to wait more than the third date before having sex. So majority of people are saying, I really want to get to know a partner. The numbers on things like hookups and casual sex are down, both in terms of the interest in it and the actual behavior. I spent the first part of my career writing about casual sex and how people kind of experienced hookup culture and behavior, and when it turned into relationships, when it didn't, how the psychological outcomes. What's remarkable for me is, after writing about it for so many years and studying it for so many years, now to have this data where people are saying, oh, I'm really not that interested in things like, I'm interested in more, the 3-date rule is back, and getting to know people.
So because like they don't want to waste their time, then does it have anything?
No, because you're trying to figure out if this person is going to be a long-term partner.
Could be actually long-term, but like also could have been also influenced by just general fear of catching COVID?
I think so. I think that's part of it. We all recognize that the more partners you have, the more sort of exposed you are. And I think it's not just COVID. I think a lot of us think, like, I haven't stopped using gloves when I put gas in my car, right? And it's like, I think it's not just COVID. It's just, I think like, oh, there's so much garbage on
now we're just hyper aware of the germs
dirty.
Everywhere.
And I think we're just more aware of thinking about things like not just sexually transmitted infections, but other kind of, and to what end, right? Now, there's certainly still people in our samples and others that are having lots of casual sex. They're enjoying it. They're finding ways to do it safely. But a lot of people are asking themselves, to what end? If I'm going to go out and hook up, what's the end goal?
Yeah.
Is that stopping me from having meaningful connections? And the bottom line is, there's only so many hours in the day. And if you're focusing your energy and your sort of emotional and psychological energy on getting ready for hookups and casual sex, and that can be, you don't realize the degree to which that can prevent you from forming meaningful connections. And also it prevents you from, the thing about courtship is it's always a two-way dance. It's what you're putting out on what you're trying to get and what other people are receiving from you, what they're learning from you. If they see you out and just hooking up, well, they're going to be less interested, because they say, you don't have time, you're busy doing that, and you very well are picking up pathogens from all the people you made out with last week.
Right. Yeah, I've heard my girlfriend say that too. Like, if he's just going to hook up with me for one night, what else is he doing with other people? Yeah. And now I'm going to catch something from him.
But isn't there? Okay, so I understand from like the pathogen standpoint, but there's also isn't this thing though about like, oh my God, like, she has all these options, but that's the one I want. There's also this thing, no? Like this kind of like, I can't get him or get her. And
oh, you mean like a competition?
Yeah. Or I feel like I've heard, I've only mostly heard like from a woman's standpoint that like guys usually, if a girl has a lot of partners and she's kind of out and about, they don't want it. But like I've heard that girls like, oh, the fact that he is not that into it makes them want him even more and try harder and be like, I can grab him, I can change him.
Yeah. I mean, there's
so it goes a bit both ways though.
But I also think it's like you're heaping trauma on trauma, like that we've been through so much like over the last like year and a half. Why would you? It's also exhausting. Like the whole idea of dating itself outside of a pandemic is exhausting. But then, you add, we've just like, we don't have the bandwidth anymore, I think, to go out and try all these new different personalities.
Yeah. I could see how it just removes the whole, like, you have less time for bullshit.
Yeah, less time for bullshit. That's I think that's part of it too. I don't know. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. I think that people are prioritizing their time. They want to be, we're being cautious. It's what my colleague Helen Fisher and I have written about in terms of what we call slow love. Helen coined this term slow love. It's that people are spending more time getting to know partners today. They want to, for our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, marriage was the often the start of a close relationship. You maybe didn't date very long, you got married, and then you started to build a life and get to know
grow together. Yeah, that's true.
For our generation, we think of it as the finale, right? We want to do it after you know everything about someone before you even think about it.
It makes more sense to me that way.
What? Marriage is the grand finale?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, from our generational standpoint, sure.
Yeah.
Because imagine, you get married to somebody and then you have to like get to know them and then you realized, or this is not for me.
Yeah, I do think something culturally has changed big time.
But also, I guess back in the day, like you had to just stick with it.
Yeah,
right.
There was that whole attitude of like just hunker down and no matter what, in sickness and health, and you made your decision. Like now you're going to stick with it, and I just think that culturally now that's so different. Where now it's like if it doesn't work out, everyone's talking about their own failures and their own setbacks and divorces and separations and whatever it might be, and their own feelings. We're way more comfortable now talking about our feelings than we ever were during even our parents' generation.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that's going to be really interesting as we watch over the next few years and decades. And have we all watched this sort of major shift in the way that we talk about our emotional well-being, the way we support ourselves and each other, and what we look for in partners is this idea of someone who can sort of support us or help us be our best selves. It's a sort of interesting moment.
So do you think this means we're evolving as a single culture?
Well, it seems like we're going back to.
Yeah, but just because you're going back doesn't mean you're not evolving. I feel like over the last, few years or, since like the evolution of apps and the emergence of dating apps and everything, I think we've taken a colossal step back when it comes to the way we're able to relate to each other. This, I think, is a lot more mature and sophisticated, even though it's kind of like an anachronism, right? Like we're kind of taking things back to how it used to be a little bit.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot. You're absolutely right. And I think, but it's a mix, right? So we know that apps and websites are now the most common way for singles to meet a partner and a romantic partner. But what a lot of people described on those platforms was difficulty really getting to know someone. Yeah. Well, what happened in the last year is mostly because of the pandemic, almost all of the major dating apps now have a video chat feature. And what we see in video chat is that really high numbers of people use it. And actually not only high numbers have used it, and in our data, more than half have said they've fallen in love with someone over a video chat.
Wow.
And I think that's, so technologies are, on the one hand, they're problematic and they're difficult. On the other hand, they're enabling us to connect, and it's an opportunity. They come with challenges, but I think that's changing. Like I'm convinced actually that video dating is a new part of the courtship process, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, we actually did an episode about an app that's just about that. But I also feel it has to do something with the generation, because I've heard multiple times, and I think it's Gen Z, that it is now for their how do we call that? Their for that group of people, not being on Instagram is now cool. Not having I was
hoping that we would get to that place.
So maybe it's also them being like, okay, this whole millennial hookup, we're on Instagram now. This is not what we want, right?
Yeah. And it's like record players.
Yeah. So
vinyl's cool again. How it's like, in person is cool again. Being able to communicate face to face is cool again. And like, getting yourself off of the apps or not apps, but like, just getting yourself off of digital is going to be cool again.
And that could make sense then, because you have a rise in people wanting a deeper connection, plus people being over the apps and over social media, and I guess it could explain also why they're wanting deeper connection. Like you can see that.
Yeah, and I think the degree. I mean, what's interesting is the degree to which we use technology to get access to information is totally new for the human animal, but. And the way we can kind of understand the world around us, navigate the world and communicate with people. Exactly to your point, though, the issue is, are we using those same technologies to sort of be a bonus for our social behavior or to replace it? And when we're using it for social interaction, we see in this, like in other studies, there's been reports of young people in particular suffering from pretty high rates of depression, psychological loneliness. Part of that is probably we don't, as part of being a social mammal, we occasionally like to touch, we hug, we kiss, we want to hear people's voice in person and see people and smell people. And that's a legacy I don't think will shake anytime soon. But what we're learning, exactly as you're both saying, I think, is learning how to use these technologies to leverage the technologies to amplify our lives, but not to replace that social interaction. Study after study shows it really isn't a good replacement for that close, that face-to-face interaction.
Well, how do you make sure that happened? Like, what's the factor that says it?
You don't want to be too reliant on it, I guess.
Because it seems like sometimes you're like, oh man, technology is going to ruin us or like species, and then it seems like also we're smart enough to know how to use it, but then you're like, oh no, actually we're not, because now more and more people are depressed. But then you're like, oh no, but look, because now we're finding ways to connect through video. So it's like,
yeah, I think it's finding that balance, right? So on the one hand, I could go on an app and say, hey, let's go to a movie tonight. I just found a movie and here's the theater and I ordered the tickets and I just did it all on my phone in the last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So we can do that. But then the question becomes, then are we going to go to dinner and a movie and not be buried in your phone during the dinner? So finding that balance of using it to help our lives and maybe even finding fun activities that you could do with people, but not to fully replace it. That's the challenge. Everyone's really still trying to figure out how to do that.
It's still so
and I think
new
it's up to the individual too, because there's a responsible way of using every piece of technology. You have to set limits for yourself and figure out what a healthy way of you using it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think particularly for people who are single or in new relationships, using those technologies to do things like, texting good morning or sending, or here's an article that made me think of you. That's a more thoughtful engagement than, it shows that I was thinking about you. I read this. It made me think about what you do for work or what you're interested in. And
right.
To use them to really make a meaningful connection with someone.
I don't send articles, but I send TikToks.
Yeah, perfect.
It's something completely different.
Yeah, really? You learn a lot from TikToks too.
Yeah, actually, yeah. But it's like, what do you think? What did you think I was gonna say?
I thought you were gonna say dick talks or like something like. I thought instead of a tick, it was gonna come out like a dick, and I was like, I don't know where he's going with this.
Always thought
the COVID glow up. No more dick pics.
And no, actually, never liked those. I never liked those. I always thought that guys' nudes are hideous. Compared to women's nudes.
It's like a
it's kind of like boom,
looking at a picture of like a mushroom. Like, okay, all right, okay, I got it. You have one. Thank you.
And so you know how to make it sexy.
Well, the female body. This is such a Seinfeld quote, but it's like Elaine back in the day. She was like, the female body, it's a work of art. The male body, it's utilitarian. It's for getting around. Wow. It's like a Jeep.
And I think how we display them and what they offer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But I digress. I feel like to me that's the biggest surprise is knowing that people are now looking for meaningful relationships after being locked down. So cuffing season has turned into cuffing. I don't know. It's like a new era, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hopefully it sticks. Hopefully it lasts. Do you think it's going to last, or what do you think? Where do you see things going?
So, I think the way people are using technology is different. So I think more people are saying that they're using, like among singles at least that are dating, they're using tech to try and do vibe checks with a partner. Trying to see, even using video to get a sense of whether we can go on more dates. All the signs point to people really, at least among singles, more than 100 million of them in the United States, focusing more on connecting and those connections. I don't think people aren't going to stop having casual sex, particularly younger people, but also older people moving out of relationships. I don't think that's going to change. I don't think infidelity is going to change. There's a whole lot of aspects of our sexual lives that probably the numbers might wax and wane as they always have throughout history.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing a moment of a little bit more focus on commitment. And in some ways, I think, Jen, what you were saying before was, it kind of felt like we were in this hookup generation or moment that there was a little bit of paranoia around it.
Yeah.
Even. I think that's sort of passing. I think what's going to be interesting is 20 years from now, we're going to say there was this moment that came and went. It might come again, but
I'm seeing. So you're hopeful. It seems like you're hopeful then.
Yeah.
I'm very optimistic. I'm optimistic about the state of relationships. I think even the way that the technologies have advanced to make it easier to connect and learn more. Even a lot of the apps.
As our dating habits are evolving, so are the dating apps.
Yeah,
that just goes to show you more shifting toward video and like that interpersonal connection.
Yeah, and they have clients that they have to. I think there's often a sense that the apps want you to stay on them forever. At least in my experience working with the folks at Match, the goal is really to have a platform that helps people connect, and then they do their thing. They do what the human brain does, as try and form a relationship.
Right.
It's sort of not good for business to be on it all the time. They want to be able to demonstrate that you make a connection.
Yeah.
And the more that it happens, but there's always going to be people who are single at any time. But it's not just, it's the video chats, but also just being more thoughtfully engaged. So we know a lot of them now might give you a short menu of, your top picks for the day, getting you to read those profiles more carefully. That's all trying to make the human brain slow down a little bit, because we know that part of the problem with the technologies is too much information, too much data, and people have a hard time choosing. Sometimes what we call cognitive overload. You have too many choices. You have a hard time choosing.
Yeah, I agree. And that can become its own addiction,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The whole swiping culture can become an addiction.
Yeah.
It's funny. There was a baby name app that I signed up for, and it's based on swiping. So you sign up for it, your partner signs up for it, and if you're a match, then it goes into you guys both heart each other. They're the name.
Kind of cool though.
And it goes into a queue. So that just goes to show you, swipe culture is real. But man, Dr. Garcia, you're always a wealth of information. It's fascinating to talk to you about this stuff. You're absolutely you and the work that you do are brilliant at the Kinsey Institute. Let me tell you.
Thanks so much. Well, it's great. I always enjoy seeing you both and getting to talk about this stuff. There's a lot happening in our romantic and sexual lives. And
we're going to have you back on. And obviously Kinsey's become like a huge resource for us. And every single time we learn something new and fascinating. So thank you for being a part of it.
Well,
where can we find you then online for people that want to know more? Or
sure. So my personal handles are Dr. Justin Garcia on Instagram and Twitter, and then I encourage folks also to look at the Kinsey Institute on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We've also been doing a lot more on our Instagram with posting about. We do a research brief once a week from one of our studies. So the Kinsey faculty published well over 100 articles a year, academic articles, and we try and make that understandable to people of different backgrounds. You don't have to be a scientist to know what we do in our labs.
Yeah.
We also, the Kinsey collection has a large amount of erotic artwork, and we've been putting a piece from our collection on Instagram every Wednesday. So we call it Art Wednesday.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. That's great.
And actually, Julian coming up soon is this wonderful French photographer we have in our collection. I'm trying to push our curator to post.
Really?
Yeah. So
what's his name?
Her name's Bettina Reams, and it's really beautiful pieces. I'll text you one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Love to see that.
Love that.
Great. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was great. Every single time it comes on, I always learn something new.
I know.
And it gives me hope. Are you hopeful after having this conversation?
Honestly, I am.
I think so.
I am. I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I do. I think it says that we've evolved. We're evolving as a dating culture, and hopefully that'll lead to even better things, like maybe the divorce rate declining, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, as always, if you have any questions, DM X Appeal Podcast.
Yep.
On Instagram, and we will
see you next week.
See you next week.